Acting Attorney General, right now, families are paying $4, $5, even $6 or $7 for gas. Inflation is at its highest level in years because of the president's policies. But instead of helping Americans get by, President Trump is literally using their tax dollars to set up a slush fund to enrich his own friends. On Monday, your department settled the president's lawsuit by setting up a fund with $1.8 billion, and you and the president will pick the handful of people who decide how that money gets doled out. So let's be clear. What we're talking about is nothing short of the sitting president of the United States looting from the Treasury for his own gain. Do you seriously think this arrangement is appropriate? The president telling the federal government to settle a case and let him pay billions to the people that he chooses?
What you just described wouldn't be appropriate, and that's absolutely not what happened, and that's not what's happening now. So you just set up a series of facts, most of which were not true.
No,
no, it's not. I mean,
the president has set up a slush fund, however you want to say that it got set up, and he literally will get to choose through his hand-picked appointees who gets paid that fund. That is absurd.
The president did not set up this fund. It's not a slush fund. It's been done many times. We have lots of funds.
I heard your response earlier to Senator Van Hollen. This is not comparable to the case that you cited. A judge was not involved. This is the president versus himself setting up a fund.
And the judge wasn't involved in the distribution in the Keep Siegel case at all. It just wasn't. There was a single commissioner that was set up, not five. And so when
the judge signed off on that case.
Yes, it was a much later point in litigation.
That's right. My point. That is all of our point. And I just have to tell you, this is corruption that has never been more blatant or more widespread. What is happening is you write the check, Trump and his cronies cash it, American taxpayers who are already being whacked with high prices are going to foot the bill. That's what we are seeing today, and that is what many of us are really, really angry about. So let me move to another topic. This Department of Justice is sending the message that if you're wealthy, if you're powerful, if you are well-connected, you won't be held accountable even if you abuse children. You know, it's after Congress passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act and DOJ finally began to release the files, your department exposed survivors' names, their sensitive personal information, and even nude photos, while redacting names of alleged perpetrators of those crimes. The message that sends is this Department of Justice worked harder to protect the privacy of potential child abusers than the survivors. Your predecessor refused to apologize to those victims, but I want to give you the same opportunity to apologize for the way the department handled the release of these documents. Will you apologize to the survivors?
When the president passed the Epstein Transparency Act, that was the only time, when the president signed the Transparency Act, that was when we were legally allowed to release the files. Prior to the passage of the act, which you all passed, I agree.
That is so not the question I'm asking.
It was a question you asked. You asked 5 or 6 questions, I'm answering them in order.
No,
the
question I want you to answer is, will you apologize to the victims whose names, sensitive personal information, and even nude photos were not redacted by your department? Will you apologize to them?
Of course. We never want to release a single victim's name.
That is what they are hearing.
Can I answer the question, please?
I'm asking if you'll apologize.
So I just said yes, but I would like an explanation to be given to that. What this act did is it required us to review over 6 million pieces of paper in a very short period of time. And so 0.001%, we made mistakes, and we owned up to them. And the second that a victim or their lawyer told us that we made a mistake, we pulled that document down, and we put lawyers 24/7 in being responsive to victims and their lawyers to make sure that we fixed every single problem. And so yes,
I hear your anger.
I'm not angry. I'm not angry. I'm just making sure it's understood
that
we matter.
Their nude photos released. I just want to hear you say I apologize to those victims.
So as I just said, of course, any time we release a victim's name that shouldn't be released, we have failed as a Department of Justice. And so we have to do everything that we can to not fail.
Well, I haven't heard the words I apologize.
I'm trying to give you an explanation of what happened. I don't think you're really interested in that because you keep on cutting me off.
I have a few more questions here, and I want to know, and I know that Senator Van Hollen raised this, but I want to ask you, will you personally commit to meeting with the survivors? I have heard from them personally that DOJ refused to meet them, and I'm asking about you. I'm asking about the Justice Department reaching out to them to be heard, not waiting for them to navigate a legal system that has obviously repeatedly failed them so far.
Can I answer?
Yeah, will you reach out to them?
So as we have said repeatedly, of course, any lawyer, now if a victim has a lawyer, I'm not allowed to reach out to the victim directly, you know that. But any lawyer can reach out to the Department of Justice. They have, and I've met with many victims and their lawyers, as has the FBI, as has the SDNY. We will always always meet with victims' counsel. Any victim
will
or their
always
lawyer
meet
can
with
come forward to the
victims'
FBI
counsel. With these
at any
women,
time.
and I've met with them, and I know Senator Van Hollen has, and so many other, they are personally so feeling abused again and again and again by what happened to them originally, and now by what's happening by them. I am saying to you, as a human being, who don't make them navigate a system that is impossible to navigate, that's already abused them. Reach out and ask to meet
So
with
wait,
them.
you're
That is
asking
all
me
I'm
to
asking
call, you want me to personally call the victims? Is that
I
what you're
can
asking
help
me to
you
do?
reach them.
Oh, that would be great. Yes, because we have said
And
from
you will
day
meet
one,
with them if
of
I reach
course,
out to you.
there have been members that have done that. And we immediately reach out to the victims or their lawyers when the lawyers want and say they want to do it.
We will follow up on that. Thank you very much.
So, who was on Capitol Hill today? Was it the acting Attorney General of the United States of America? Or, as one Democratic lawmaker put it today, was it Donald Trump's consigliere? Todd Blanche came under withering questioning from Democrats over the wholesale replacement of the Department of Justice's 150-plus-year-old mission of upholding the rule of law in this country and around the world, with instead doing the bidding of an aspiring autocrat named Donald J. Trump. A key focus today, that $1.8 billion settlement funded by our money, taxpayer dollars. Our taxpayer dollars will now be used to compensate people who claim to have been wronged by the Justice Department, the so-called victims of weaponization. Here's Senator Van Hollen on that.
This is an outrageous, unprecedented slush fund that you set up. Simple question. Will individuals who assaulted Capitol Hill police officers be eligible for this fund?
Well, as it makes plain, anybody is
just let me know if they're eligible for the fund.
As was made plain yesterday, anybody in this country is eligible to apply if they believe they were a victim of weaponization.
Mr. Attorney General, let me ask you this. Are there going to be rules that say that if you've assaulted a Capitol Hill police officer or committed a violent crime, you will not be eligible? Why not make that a rule?
I expect that, because I'm not one of the commissioners setting up the rules, I expect that there will be rules. You're appointing 4 of the 5 members, aren't you, Mr. Attorney General?
Pardon me? You're appointing 4 of the 5 members.
I am appointing all 5 members.
Set up. There's also an individual who, after being pardoned by the president, went on to molest 2 children. And that person actually tried to buy the silence of these children by saying that he would pay them some of the funds that he was hoping to get from your slush fund. Can you commit to making the rules so that that person is not eligible for a payout under this fund? Well,
you're obviously lying in your question, because there's no way that this person committed to that. The slush fund, as you call it, which is not, didn't exist.
I'm sure,
but I can commit.
Mr. Attorney General, don't ever do that again. I am reporting what he said. He said on the expectation that he hoped to get some of the funds from a payout. He's been
you said from the slush fund, Senator, and that didn't exist when he said that.
This is the fund that the president and all of you have been telegraphing all along that you're going to use to help the president's friends.
Can you point to a single telegraph? What telegraph did
I have a last question for you. Do you know that it is a criminal offense to lie to Congress?
I am very well aware of that.
I'm glad to hear that.
A couple headlines there. Blanche acknowledging it is a slush fund, and we'll use his quotes if you'd like us to, but also suggesting that the child molester who was convicted for the crime of telling the child he molested that there was money coming to him in restitution didn't even know, couldn't have even known about the slush fund. The person that Senator Van Hollen was asking Todd Blanche about is named Andrew Paul Johnson. He's right now, as we come on the air, right now his status is this. He's serving a sentence of life in prison for molesting minors. NPR reports this about him. Police reported that man, Johnson, 45, tried to keep the children quiet by telling them he would share the millions of dollars in restitution money he expected to receive from the Trump administration in connection with his January 6 case, end quote. At one point, as part of his bungling defense of the slush fund, Todd Blanche suggested that anybody, any Republican, any Democrat in this country could apply for money if they, quote, believe they were victims. Watch that.
It is true that this is unusual. That is true. But it is not unprecedented. And it was done to address something that had never happened again either. So there is an unprecedented nature of what we did yesterday in response to years and years of weaponization. Just to correct a few things, Senator, it's not limited to Republicans. It's not limited to Biden. It's not limited to the Biden weaponization. It's not limited to in any way, scope, or form to January 6 or to Jack Smith. There's no limitation on the claims.
Okay, so with that stipulated, is former director of the FBI Jim Comey eligible? His team argued that he was the victim of a vindictive and selective prosecution? What about New York's Attorney General Tish James? What about the Southern Poverty Law Center or Act Blue, or the 6 members of Congress who were investigated for simply saying out loud, on camera, that the men and women of the United States military swore an oath not to follow any illegal orders? They have good claims. Are your handpicked 5 commissioners going to grant their claims? I doubt. So in a world where Todd Blanche picks, as he said, he corrected the questioner, it wasn't just 4 members, it's all 5 of the commissioners who make the decisions, we can safely rule that out. This is also the same Todd Blanche who claims that there's evidence that Bill Barr couldn't find, or Brad Raffensperger, or any of the other Trump allies who looked really hard, that the 2020 election was indeed rigged. This is the same Todd Blanche who served as Donald Trump's defense attorney, the same Todd Blanche who now cannot definitively say if violent felons who assaulted cops will receive money from the quote slush fund. Here's what happened when Todd Blanche was pressed again about ensuring that money from taxpayers does not go to the most violent insurrectionists.
Will you agree to encourage those commissioners to set a guideline that compensation will not go to individuals who are convicted of assaulting police officers?
I expect...
Just a yes would answer my question, or a no.
Yes will not answer the question. I mean, you're asking whether I will encourage. I don't think that's a fair word. I don't think it's the Attorney General's job to encourage commissioners to do or not do anything.
Bar, forbid, ban, rule out. Change the word. Hours after that testimony wrapped up on Capitol Hill, news broke that the Department of Justice expanded its settlement with Donald Trump. A one-page document signed by, you guessed it, that guy, Todd Blanche, and posted on the Justice Department website, bars the IRS from ever pursuing an audit of Donald Trump or his family businesses. 407 will be eagerly awaiting the release of Donald Trump's taxes now that we know he can never, ever, ever be audited. That was his excuse back in 2016 for not releasing them. Politico and the New York Times were the first to report the news about the document. The Justice Department did not provide comment on the document to either news organization. The acting head of the Justice Department up on Capitol Hill, facing withering questions about Donald Trump's attempt to turn the office of the presidency into a personal piggy bank funded by the American taxpayer, is where we begin today with some of our most favorite reporters and friends. Justice and Intelligence reporter Ken Delaney is here. Also joining us, former Department of Justice pardon attorney Liz Oyer is here. She was fired by Trump's Department of Justice after refusing to reinstate actor Mel Gibson's gun rights. And with me at the table, back at the table for the hour, our friend Andrew Weissman's here. We're so glad you're here.
I'm so glad to be here.
I'm so excited to talk about the book. The new book is called Liar's Kingdom. It's so important. It's so good. It's so timely. It's about how to stop Trump's deceit and save America. We deal with lying. We deal with gaslighting. We'll pull that thread all hour, and then we'll dive into the book a little bit later on. I want to ask you about Todd Blanche's performance today. And there were actually a lot of guys. It's like a 3-ring circus, right? Vance was in one ring, Blanche on the other. The problem with performing for an audience of one, which is what they're all trained to do, motivated to do, is that the answers sound ridiculous.
Right. I mean, that is the reason he could not say, we are not going to give money to violent felons. If you remember, before the inauguration, you had the vice president, Ann Pam Bondi, suggesting, well, don't worry, we're going to do a triage of the January 6th defendants to suggest that the violent ones would not get a pardon. Well, they got ahead of their skis because everyone got a pardon. And so here you see Todd Blanche not being able to even say that minimally decent thing. But I think I'd like to step back one step to this. The entire thing is built on, in my view, a lie. I mean, the entire predicate for this is that there needs to be a fund because of the weaponization of the Biden Justice Department in going after people who attacked the Capitol on January 6th. We saw it with our own eyes. Those people, there was no weaponization. Those people got due process. They either pleaded guilty, or they were found guilty by a jury, or they were awaiting trial. That is not weaponization. That is
Mitch McConnell actually justifies not convicting Donald Trump in his impeachment trial by saying he should be adjudicated by the justice system.
Exactly. So this is all predicated on something that they're just pretending, oh, of course, all those people were victimized. I would remind people, we saw with our own eyes the crime. And even with all of that abundant evidence, these people were given due process, the rule of law, and there was an adjudication. What is happening now is these people are being told, if you commit crimes for Donald Trump, not only will you get a pardon, but you now have the prospect of cashing in on your crimes. What is the deterrent effect now going forward when you created this paid army with criminal impunity? Because there will not only be no criminal repercussions, there's a reward for what they're doing. This is gobsmacking, and the person who is announcing this and defending it